Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Chambers. I hope you guys are safe, happy, and well wherever you are in the world and listening. And that's right, if you haven't guessed it already, it's time to grab a blanket, get that favorite beverage or that favorite furry friend, and curl up and sit down and get ready to talk about some travel. Today, we're going to be going to the great state of Arizona, and we're going to talk about traveling to Phoenix, Arizona, as well as traveling a little farther north up to the Red Rock country of Sedona, and even taking a little trip to the Grand Canyon. You know, that little place with there's, it's kind of a big deal. You can see it from space, I've heard. But make sure that you stay tuned to the end of the show, because I'm going to give you some of the most difficult hikes that you could possibly go on here in the U.S. You're not going to want to miss that, especially for you outdoor enthusiasts. So let's dive right in, guys. So today I'm talking about the great state of Arizona. And if you've never been to Arizona, it's really a unique experience, in my opinion. If you're not a desert person, I don't think that matters. Phoenix itself it's a metropolitan city, so if you're a city dweller, you're going to get some of the same amenities that you would get through other major cities. So if that's kind of your concern, I wouldn't worry about that. But it has a lot of different things to offer that you don't get. If you're from the East Coast, it's definitely going to feel a little bit more like a culture shock coming out to the desert, unless you're kind of used to that. And when we think of desert in the United States, if you've never been, I know a lot of people might jump right in and say, oh, I'm thinking of like pure sand, mirages. I can see for miles with no civilization. And while that might be true as a desert landscape, it's not exactly the same type of desert that you're going to encounter in Phoenix. I mean, there's cactus, there's mountains, there's a lot of different types of vegetation and things around the area. But it is that dry heat that you're going to experience. But the really neat thing about Phoenix is when you talk about the temperature is, yes, in the summertime, you hear people saying, oh, you're in Arizona, it's 110 degrees, things are melting to your face. But it's okay because it's dry heat. Well, guys, I want to just throw my opinion out there. Regardless of whether it's 110 with humidity or with high humidity or 110 with no humidity, it's still 110 degrees, so it's extremely hot. But Phoenix isn't always 110 degrees. That's the one misconception that I think people have about going to Arizona. There's plenty of places in Arizona where the temperature drops below freezing. Now, if you're visiting Phoenix in December, you can really expect to have temperatures in the mid to high 60s, which when you think about it, that is gorgeous, right? That's like jacket fall weather almost feels like. And that's at December. But those temperatures do get down to chilly and cool at night. Just like any type of desert setting, your nights are always going to be a little chillier. But don't let that fool you, because the area that surrounds Phoenix, like when you get other places up north, which we'll talk about in later segments, it can get below freezing. You can get snow and other things like that. But while you're in Phoenix, the South obviously has milder winters than the rest of the state, but they will experience some heavy snow and colder temperatures in other places. So just to keep in mind. So determining when you want to go is probably going to make a big difference on what kind of experience that you're going to have. If you are a person that doesn't mind getting, cold, or the weather doesn't bother you, kind of like the extremes, whether it's cold or hot, then you can go at almost any time. My personal recommendation is going to be going in the fall. The fall is absolutely beautiful. And in fact, my personal recommendation, even not just the fall, I should say, is I recommend in late October, November. I had a great experience when we went to visit. I have some family in Arizona, and we went over there to visit for Thanksgiving. And we went on this beautiful little hike, and the weather was just gorgeous. It was 60s, high 60s, 70s. It was probably about 73, I think. And we just didn't want to be inside at all. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was just a dream as far as the weather, and the setting was wonderful. And so I really recommend, if you are looking for that perfect temperature, if that's the biggest thing, then you're going to want to look at the fall or spring to go visit Arizona in general, but Phoenix specifically. Phoenix is the capital city, so it's always great when you get a chance, and it's one of its largest cities. And I think that there's so much to offer, and not just from a big city standpoint. So let's look at a couple things that Phoenix can offer, right? Besides being the capital city and, it getting well over, 105, 108, whatever in the summertime, it packs a different styles of climates at any given time. So that aside, we're going to put that aside. There are a couple things that you can do. One thing that's always recommended is going to Camelback Mountain. Camelback Mountain is the very popular area for hiking. It's not exactly known for an easy hiking trail. So if you are someone that struggles a little bit or has some physical disabilities, or you just get worn out really easily, make sure that you check the trails or really see if you are physically up for this challenge, because Camelback Mountain, as beautiful as it is, has a lot of challenging hikes that are absolutely gorgeous and breathtaking. And I think if you are an outdoors person, this is something that you're not going to want to miss. It's also very close to the historic downtown of Scottsdale, the Old Town area, which, if you're not into hiking, getting sweaty and all that, go into Old Town and check out the shops and a bunch of the cafes and restaurants, because there's going to be something for everyone there. And in fact, Scottsdale Fashion Square has one of the largest shopping malls in the country. And if you're looking for, spas or spiritual areas and things to check out, you're going to want to be spending some time there, and it's just going to be a joy. The other thing that I'm going to recommend is checking out the Desert Botanical Gardens. Okay, the Desert Botanical Gardens is something that I'm just going to give you a couple quick facts about it. It's beautiful because, one, it's not your typical, what you would think of in my brain as a botanical garden, right? When I think of a botanical garden, I'm thinking more tropics and greenery everywhere and stuff. And there is greenery, but it's in this beautiful desert setting, and it's on 140 acres. Which is a lot. So not only do you have, is it more of an easier walking trail that you can, which they do accommodate wheelchairs and things like that. So if you have someone in your party or that you're traveling with that requires assistance with that, this is something that they can do. It showcases, there's over 50,000 plant displays showcased in the outdoor exhibits. And they have 116 full-time staff members with also 731 volunteers. So like any great place, like a botanical garden, a park, a zoo, or anything like that, volunteers help run that place. I mean, you do have your full-time staff members, but that's really what makes it. So it's really great. They get over 500,000 people that visit there annually, so it is a very popular spot. So you want to make sure that you look on the time frame of when you're going. But they have over 4,000 species in the living collection and 485 rare and endangered species in the care of the garden. So that's really a awesome thing to do. And if you're an outdoors person, this is something you're not going to want to miss. You are definitely not going to want to miss. So you're going to want to plan your adventure. Make sure you wear comfortable shoes, water, sunglasses, sunscreen, get that camera, right? Admission is for youth. If you have a child or someone under 3, it's free. If you're a member, it is free as well. But general admission is between $15 to $30. The youth is between 3 years old and 17 years old, and that's between about $10 to $15. So the times vary throughout the year, but double check. Typically, if you're traveling in the fall, October through December, it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But just double check. And like when you travel anywhere, you just always want to make sure that you know what's going on. But those are 2 great things to do. So Camelback Mountain, great for hiking, being outdoors. Check out the Desert Botanical Gardens, fantastic. Another little bit easier of a walk and an adventure in nature. Just 2 wonderful things. There's so many other things that we can get to. Those are 2 that I recommend. But again, if you're a shopper, get to the Old Town area and check out in Scottsdale and check that out. There's going to be shops and spas and all kinds of things to do. And I mean, there's just something for everyone. Now, as far as hotels go, if you're looking for hotels, there's a bunch that you can look at, but I'm going to give 2. And one is because I tend to like to live a little bit more when I'm traveling, if I can, on the luxurious side. I don't like to go and do the backpacking thing as much. I love to be adventurous, but when I get to a hotel, I want to make sure that I am in comfort. So you can always do an Airbnb. Those are always options to make sure that you look at that, and also make sure when you are renting an Airbnb, make sure you do your research on it and do it properly and go through the correct channels. Don't go through backdoor channels. I've heard horror stories about people that have got an Airbnb and just it turned into a really bum deal. So be careful with that. But I'm going to give 2. One is a little bit more family-friendly. They're both, I think, family-friendly, but one is a little bit lower in cost if you're more of a budget-cautious person. One that I recommend is the Arizona Grand Resort. It's great. It will run you about $200 a night. It's great for families. No pets. So if you're traveling with pets, this is going to be somewhere that you're not going to want to be exactly looking to stay. It's a 4-diamond all-suite resort. It's a family destination. It's got a golf course right there. So it's a really beautiful property, and for $200 a night, it's really, in my opinion, I think that's a great budget place for a fantastic hotel. The other one I'm going to recommend is the Sanctuary Camelback Mountain Resort. Now, that resort is about roughly about 10 minutes from Camelback Mountain, right? So if you're going to Camelback Mountain and wanting to go that route, this is definitely going to be a better spot for you. It's also a little bit more luxurious. It is beautiful in every aspect, but it's going to run you about $400 to $500 a night. So the pool, the setting, you're going to have the mountain right there in the background, and you're only about 15 minutes from historic downtown. It's a really good spot, and if you're planning to do a lot of those recommended activities, this will be somewhere that you're going to want to check out. So those are a little bit of things that I recommend doing in Phoenix. There's so much more to do, so make sure that you guys check your research. But also, if you're looking for food, if you listen to me on the podcast, you know that I am a big foodie and I love it. Again, with so many options, you just have to pick your style and go with what fits for you. I'm going to throw out 2 recommendations that have been rated pretty high. And if you are a steak person, Durant's is a place that is always recommended. It's been recommended to me by friends and word of mouth, as well as if you Google and all other websites that say that it's a great place, and it's supposed to be one of the best steakhouses in Phoenix. So if you're a steak person, that one is going to just ring true to you. So I would go and check out Durant's. And if you want to, you're not feeling quite that heavy or wanting to do something that's a little bit less than fine dining and more casual, then check out the Pizzeria Bianco. And this has been rated a very high pizzeria in Phoenix, and everyone swears by it. So I even found a website called 10best.com, and they said that it is arguably the best pizza in the country, not to be missed when you're in town. So, it is highly recommended, but if you want some pizza, that would be somewhere to go. So there you go. Some hotel recommendations, some food, some activities, a great place. Again, starting off strong, great weather. Phoenix is a good place to go. So stick with me, because when we come back after the break, I'm going to be talking about getting in that car and traveling up a little bit farther north to Sedona. So you're not going to want to miss this. Stay tuned.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. We just finished talking about taking and starting this Arizona paradise trip in Phoenix. That's right, the capital city there of Arizona. Great place to start. And make sure you guys stay tuned to the end of the show, because I'm going to give you what have been considered some of the toughest hikes to take here in this country. So if you're an outdoor enthusiast, this is something you're not going to want to miss. But we're going to jump right into our next segment, and that is moving right along through the state of Arizona. Because, yes, it is possible to make a trip in more than one city in Arizona. And I actually really recommend it, because as much as you could absolutely stay in one place and spend a week or a couple days there, and it would still be wonderful. But I think that if you have the time, if you have about a week, or have a limited amount of time, and you have maybe about a week or a couple days, it is absolutely possible to see multiple areas of Arizona, and they all bring something special to them. So we're going to be driving north up to the Red Rock country of Sedona, Arizona. That's right. Now, also, I didn't mention this in the first segment, but getting around in Arizona, it's highly recommended that you get a car. Now, if you're just going to be in Phoenix or a certain area and you're not, or a city and area, you're not going to be moving around a lot, you could probably do ride shares, things like that, Ubers and Lyfts and those things. But I'm going to recommend, if you're wanting to do day trips or travel, my recommendations, like going up to Sedona, or Flagstaff, or even the Grand Canyon, which we'll get to in the next segment, you're going to want a car. And I recommend going to rentalcars.com. Rentalcars.com is basically kind of a host site where you can compare all of the different rental car companies. It's really a great thing to use, especially if you're not quite sure which company to use with, or you don't have any loyalty brands, you're not brand loyalty to a certain rental car company. It'll lay it out there for you. So if you're really on a budget and just needing something to get from point A to point B, or you're wanting to ride in style, you'll be able to compare these. I really recommend going to rentalcars.com. It's a great comparison tool, and it's It's a great website. So check that out. So once you've got your car, if you're in a group or if you're by yourself, you got a rental car, now you are mobile. And we're going to leave Phoenix here, and we're going to drive up to Sedona. And it's only about a 2 to 2.5 hour drive. And that's if you're going to go straight there. There are stops along the way, though, that you can make. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people going from Phoenix to Sedona miss. My father was very much, when we traveled, when I was growing up, we got to get from point A to point B. And I loved him dearly, but he wasn't one that would like to stop at all these odd little spots or certain places. If we knew we were going to a certain destination and it wasn't a really big stopping point, then he wasn't really going to do it. And I think that can be a mistake for those of you that are road tripping in the great state of Arizona, especially on this specific stretch, because there's a couple of different stops that you can take, and some of them are right off the main highway on your way to Sedona. Others, you might have to go off the beaten path a little bit, but I'm going to give you at least one that I really recommend, well, really two, actually, that I really recommend that are small detours, but they also give you a chance to see a little bit more of Arizona, and on top of that, they break up the 2.5 hour drive. If you're used to driving, like I'm from Texas, so when I have to go somewhere, I'm used to driving, or if I have to go visit family, it's a couple hours always. So a 2.5 hour drive to me is not a big deal. And for a lot of you that are in major cities and have to deal with traffic, a 2 to 2.5 hour drive may not be a big deal for you as well. But for some of us, that is a long car ride. So this can break it up. And the first stop I'm going to recommend on your way up to Sedona is Montezuma Castle National Monument. And it's not really a castle, but it's one of the most well-preserved cliff dwellings in the entire continent. I kid you not, it is beautiful. I have seen it with my own two eyes. You see pictures of it, and you're like, that's great. It's no big deal. No, it's really kind of amazing when you, especially as close as you can get to it. Now, you can't actually get and walk in the dwellings themselves because they're trying to keep them preserved, but it's a nice little walk, and it's only about a 30 to 45-minute stop that you're going to need. So, you can maybe picnic if you want, but it's only going to be a short little quick stop. But it's really great, and it's very interesting. I mean, the cliff dwellings date back to the 12th century. So that's pretty amazing that they are that well preserved. They're that well preserved. And it's remains that are of 20-room dwellings. There are about 20 rooms that they've said that are preserved. And, these were places that probably housed families, or, who knows at that point as far back as they go. But you can't go, like I said, you can't go inside the structure, but you can get pretty close to seeing them. And it's a little trail that will loop around the area, so it's a nice little walk. It'll stretch your legs, and you learn a little something. It's really a cool stop, and I really highly recommend that one. The next stop that I'm going to tell you that you can make, which I was a little sad that I missed this one, and if I go back and do this drive, I'm definitely going to stop in this little city. It's Jerome. So Jerome is a town. It's actually one of the richest cities in the entire country, or at least at one point when it was in all its glory, it was considered one of the richest cities in the country. And that was probably, about a century or so ago. But Jerome was the largest producer of gold, copper, and silver in the state. And it had about 15,000 residents, and people would just flock there. But what makes Jerome a really neat stop now, for those of you that are on this road trip to Sedona, it is a ghost town. It's the largest ghost town in the country, right? And less than 500 people call this place home. So if you're really into, ghost stories or that kind of mystery aspect of things, it's really kind of a neat stop. There's museums and places and things to check out in the town. I really want to go and see it. I was sad to miss this opportunity, but you guys don't make my mistake. I'm recommending it. I had a friend that went there, and he is really big into supernatural and ghost stories and things like that, and just absolutely loved it. So if that's you and you know it's you, go check it out. But even so, it's a little neat little town. So it'll break up that 2.5 hour drive. So there you go. Those are 2 recommendations. But now, getting into Sedona. That's right. Now we are in Red Rock country. And Sedona is it's in my list of top places in the U.S. It is absolutely so beautiful. And I can't really make you understand without having you go there. So I'm just going to do my best to convince you that it is just something you want to see. And the best part is every view throughout the day that you are of the mountains and all the Red Rock country, it changes at different parts of the day. So in the morning, the way the sun hits the cliffs and everything else, the colors are just so brilliant. And in the afternoon, they're a different color. And then by sunset, they're even a different color. So not only are you getting this gorgeous background, beautiful weather, but you're getting this almost, it seems like a different scenery in a new way, or the same scenery in a new way. So it's a neat thing to see. I highly recommend getting to Sedona. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. That's all I can say. But there are things to do there. And I'm just going to hit on a couple big ones because, like every place, you can always go and find plenty to do. And they have horseback riding, mountain biking, of course, hiking trails, canoe trips, things like that. There's day trips that you can look into. But if those are not really your thing, I'm going to recommend a couple of other options for you. And I'm going to start with going to Chapel of the Holy Cross. And it's a really beautiful church that's built into the cliffs, and it's this big cross that you can see, and it kind of looks like it's emerging from the rocks, and the structure and the architecture of it is just amazing. And it gives you a chance to kind of drive through Sedona and some of the mountain areas, and just you can drive up there and park, and it has a gorgeous view from the church when you get in there. And it's really something I think that is worth stopping to see, especially if you're just kind of driving around and observing the area and seeing things. It's a very, very interesting architectural marvel that I would not want to miss if you are into that. And it sticks out plain and day, and it's really iconic in the city of Sedona. So Chapel of the Holy Cross, definitely check that out. The other one that is always recommended is Devil's Bridge Hike. And this is a very popular trail in Sedona. So I'm gonna tell you, if this is what you want to do, the Devil's Bridge Hike, you're gonna want to get there in the morning if you're wanting less people, because it does get a lot of people on this trail, because it's also a good trail for pretty much any level of hiker or outdoors person. So it can be challenging enough for experienced hikers, but it's really a great skill level that challenges everyone enough, but without being exerting too much. And whether you're a beginner level of hiking or you're advanced and more experienced hiker, this is kind of fits everybody. It's also short enough for you to do in a couple hours, which is great. And it's this really beautiful cliff that you hike up to, and it looks just basically this bridge or this rock formation that looks like a bridge that's suspended over the mountain range, and it's like there's nothing under you almost. And if you look online, just the pictures and things that people take, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And I really recommend checking that one out. Now, the other one that I am going to throw out there too, not to get too much into hiking, but it's very, very iconic, and hiking Cathedral Rock is probably the next big thing after Devil's Bridge Trail. So I'm going to really recommend that one. And then, of course, I can't leave out Oak Creek Canyon. And so if you don't know what Oak Creek Canyon is, it's a state park. It's a natural water park in Oak Creek Canyon that provides both locals and tourists with this natural ecosystem of a water slide. That's the best way I can put it. It is basically the algae that kind of, the way it forms on the rocks and everything on this little river through the rocks, it creates this slippery little slope on part of the rocks that creates this little river. So it's a little slide, and people can go and get in the water and slide down the rock, and it's just a lot of fun. It's also in a historic homestead. It's also complete with an apple orchard. So not only do you have this beautiful park with the water to kind of get wet in and slide and have fun with, it's family friendly. You can have a picnic. You're right there in an apple orchard. So it's a beautiful and great outdoor time. So you're not necessarily going to want to do that in the wintertime, but the area is so beautiful that if you do go there when it's a little bit cooler, having a picnic or just sitting out and enjoying the scenery is still worth it to me. So I think everyone should be checking that one off your list. Oak Creek Canyon, get on that. If you go in the summer, make sure you best be doing the Slide Rock. That's right. They call it the Slide Rock State Park there. So those are things that I really highly recommend as far as it goes with outdoor hiking and things like that. But if you are not wanting to do anything on that nature, sure, let's look at doing, I don't know, a day trip to the Verde Valley Vineyards. That's right. If you guys didn't know, if you haven't heard me on the podcast, I have mentioned this before, but there is a wine trail, and it spans about 450 square miles and cuts through Cottonwood, which is a small city just outside of Sedona. It's roughly about a population of anywhere between 10 to 12,000 people, so it's not very big, but there's different wineries and things out there, so you can take a day trip. There's different tour companies you can do it with. Well, they'll actually pick you up from your hotel, but it's really a very fun experience. And if you want to relax, have some good bites, drink some great wine, and enjoy the area and Red Rock Country, definitely check that out. Definitely check that out. And of course, there's spas and some shopping in Sedona and things like that. So don't feel like everything you do, you have to go and be doing outdoors. One of the other things that I want to throw out there and recommend that a friend of mine told me is doing a meditation or a yoga, an outdoor yoga class or meditation, outdoor meditation, because it said that the area is very spiritual. So it's something that locals and people that live there really kind of abide by and really feel strongly about. So it's kind of a neat feeling too. Now, of course, there's always places that you can eat and find. I'm just going to throw out one, the Cowboy Club. It's kind of a 2-in-1 dining experience. It's the main Cowboy restaurant. It was originally a meeting place for the first settlers of Sedona, so it's kind of cool. So you have like the history of it. But then you have the steakhouse and the dining, with all their signature dishes, things like cactus fries and a rattlesnake combo and things like that. But it's a little bit more themed upscale steakhouse dining, but it's a lot of fun. Another one, if you want to go on kind of a lower level or a different style, you can have the Oak Creek Brewery and Grill, which is great. It's wood fire and rotisserie food. That's a great option. And then the third one, just because it's the Golden Goose, it's a cafe and bistro. It serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 7 days a week. It's a little more intimate environment. They have great handcrafted cocktails, and it's kind of an American-Italian classic infusion. And they also have live music. So I'm going to throw those restaurant recommendations out. Check those out. And, of course, it wouldn't be going to Sedona if you couldn't find the most wonderful place to stay, right? And, again, always research and check before you go and book. Airbnb is certainly an option to do. If you're wanting to traveling with a group and want to get one place, that is definitely an option to check out. There's plenty of places for Airbnb, a lot of houses, a lot of places around the Sedona and close to the Sedona area, so you don't have to stay right in town if you're going to go with Airbnb. Same thing with some of the hotels. Some of them are closer to town, and some of them are just on the outskirts. And the ones on the outskirts you can find, you have to drive a little bit farther to, but they're very peaceful and very beautiful, just as beautiful. But I got 3 options for you that I like, and of course, I'm going to start with the most expensive, Enchantment Resort. Okay, this is going to be a little bit pricey. It's set on 70 acres. It's a very upscale resort. It's a little bit outside of Sedona, but it's not too far from Slide Rock State Park. So there you go. If you're wanting to put that on your bucket list, you're gonna have a little access to that. It's not around the corner, but it's a good little 20 minutes from there. It's very Southwestern decor, but it is going to run you, a little bit more. It's a gorgeous property, upscale. They got the private pools and the fireplaces and the hot tubs and things like that, and upgraded rooms, and it's great. So I recommend Enchantment Resort. And if you want to take it down a notch and not spend so much on a hotel for your budget, you can check out the Hyatt Residence Club Sedona. That's roughly going to be about $300 to $400 a night, which is less than Enchantment Resort. And then even if you want something that's just as good, but you want it a little bit maybe more exclusive, or I guess romantic would be a better word for it. But the Sky Ranch Lodge, gorgeous property. It's going to cost you between $200 to $300, so it's not on the cheap side, but it's definitely an option, which is a step down from the other 2 hotels, and it's a fantastic resort. They have all the amenities that you're going to want, gorgeous background. But personally, guys, I don't think you can go wrong with any of the hotels or stays, whether you do Airbnb, you do one of these recommended hotels, or you find your own. Check them out, because the scenery itself, you're just going to want to be outside. So as long as you have somewhere where you can sit and enjoy the scenery, I think you guys are going to be happy wherever you stay. So Sedona is a must-do, and especially if you are not going to Arizona for any other reason, definitely check it out. After the break, when we come back, we are going to get into that big hole in the ground that you can see from space. That's right, we're going to be talking about the Grand Canyon. So stick with me.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back. We were just talking about Red Rock Country and the beautiful city of Sedona, Arizona. That's right. So if you are traveling to Arizona, you need to make that one of your stops. But not far from Sedona is another fantastic place that we're going to get into that if you've never been to in your life, you at least need to go once. It's something that I think everyone needs to go and see once. It's like going to Paris and not seeing the Eiffel Tower. You can't go to Arizona and not see the Grand Canyon. That's right. We're going to talk about the Grand Canyon, and a lot of people are like, it's a big hole in the ground. It is phenomenal. It is remarkable. All the cliffs, the nature, the sheer size of it, the beauty that it's very. You could go on and on with so many descriptive words of how wonderful and brilliant it is, but it's hard for anyone to really imagine that or let their mouths actually say those words if they've never been there. I feel that people that always say, whatever, it's the Grand Canyon, are just people that have never been there. But once they go, it just opens your eyes to really how small we are, on this earth. It's that incredible. So the Grand Canyon is definitely a trip that I think you need to make when traveling to Arizona. So, we started this journey right there in Phoenix. Then we took a road trip, a couple stops up to Sedona, and now we're taking another road trip to the Grand Canyon. But you know what? Just like the rest of this podcast, in true Arizona fashion, doing this road trip, you're going to have stops that you're going to want to make on the way. It's about a 2-hour drive from Sedona to the Grand Canyon. It takes about 2 hours. So it can easily be done as a day trip. That's not a problem for those of you that just say, well, I just want to go see it and come back. You absolutely can do that. I still recommend doing that. If that's all you want to do, go, or at least going. I recommend at least going, even if you're just going to go, snap a picture and leave. It's jaw-dropping, beautiful scenery up there. But I really encourage you to spend more time, because that, I think, is the mistake that a lot of people make. They just go, they do the photo op, the picture, they go to the most iconic spot, they take it, I've seen it, and then they leave. And there's really so much to do up there. In fact, we won't even be able to get to even scrape the surface of all the things that you can make out of this trip. I mean, this could be a couple days in itself. And for those that go up there and travel and have been there and do some of the things and the trails and things like that, you know what I'm talking about. You know that it takes so much time, and you just need a lot more time than even one day. You need a few days, really. I mean, you could probably spend a week and still, maybe even 2, and still not do all the trails and things that you could do at the Grand Canyon, which makes it so spectacular. But as you're on your way up there from Sedona, if you're driving, okay, it's really, really great. You're going to stop in either Flagstaff, which is the largest city in the northern area of Arizona, which is an hour from Sedona. So it's kind of a good stopping point or a good halfway mark. So if you want to drive, get some lunch, or, get some things to pack to take with you before you get to the Grand Canyon, bottles of water, things like that, get gas, whatever. There are things up there. But again, kind of like when you have an isolated area or a park or things that are somewhat limited, there are, places to stay, things to eat, gas stations, all that up there as well, but the price is going to be a little bit higher. So, stopping in Flagstaff, it's a good thing to do. And Flagstaff is a neat city, so if you wanted to break that up and see another part of Arizona, I say do it. Recommend it. Or you could go to Williams, which is just west of Flagstaff, and that is where the train depot is, the Grand Canyon Railway leaves from, and you can actually take that train up to the Grand Canyon. And that's actually where I'm going to go with it, okay? You can, and this is what I want to do, which I didn't get a chance to do. We traveled up there, and we were by car, and so we stopped, but we didn't do as many of the trails and things like that I wanted to do. But I highly recommend this, and it looks just amazing, like an amazing experience. If you want to add a little bit more fun, a little bit more flair to going to the Grand Canyon, then go to Williams and stay at the hotel there. Okay, so you're gonna want to stay at the Grand Canyon Railway Hotel. Okay, and this is literally walking distance to the train station from the hotel. And it's a great restaurant. There's a bar there. There's a pool. You get Wi-Fi. It's comfortable. There's even a place if you want to have your dogs taken care of while you go to the Grand Canyon for the day. They have facilities there for that as well. So if you don't want to take your dog and you want them just to be waiting, wagging tail when you come back, they have that. It's really a neat experience because not only are you getting on this train and riding up there, but they make it a true, a lot of fun with this experience. You can, several different class cabins that you can get into. So it's not just like one train where you kind of sit and are crammed in there. You can sit in what I guess they call the Pullman class or the coach class. Then you can go first class or the observation dome where it's kind of 3/4 of a way, like it's almost like having a sunroof while the train's traveling. They have a luxury car. And there's also, you can, if you've ever wanted to feel like you're in an old Western and stand on the very back of the train on the caboose and just kind of like look at the scenery as it passes, you can do that. And it's just incredible. And it's a lot of fun because they have food and drinks and everything, and they have entertainment where the people come in as characters and will sing on this train. And it drops you off right into the middle of the park. That is kind of the real amazing part of it. It's going to put you right there where you want to be going into the Grand Canyon Village, right there at the train depot where a lot of people go. And there's a lot of historic sites right around the area, so it kind of puts you in the middle of it. Plus, you don't have to deal with parking. That's another thing that you have to realize. If you are going to be driving up there, you want to make sure that you're getting there early enough so you can deal with parking and all of that and entrance into the park. But if you take the train, you don't have to worry about that. A lot of people will do those coach and buses and things like that. For me, I'm not a fan of something of that nature. It's kind of like doing cruise ships. I think they can be fantastic, but I think the best part about cruise ships are when you're at sea and experiencing the ship itself, right? I don't like being herded off like a massive group of like cattle getting off, a boat or being pushed somewhere through a gate. And that's what I feel like some of these coach services are, because you're on a very strict time limit. You really need more time at the Grand Canyon. If you're just going for that photo op, great. I think it's still worth it to go, but there's so much to do. So let's just start with the village. I'm going to try to scratch the surface of some of this. You can go to the Grand Canyon Village. It's the most popular entryway into the park. Okay, so you're going to have a lot of crowds there, but it's great. You get welcomed right there at the railway depot, and it kind of makes you feel like you're in the Grand Canyon. So I really recommend that. It's home to, and hopefully I say this correctly, Yavapai Point. Yavapai Point. I hope I said that correctly. It's one of the best places apparently to view the canyon. That's, if you're not camping there or staying in an RV or anything like that, it's a great view that you want to check out. So like I said, you want to get there early. There's places all over the town that you're going to want to check out. There's, gift shops and historical sites, and there are places to stay in the park. So you can actually, there are lodging availabilities and camping opportunities that you can do in the park. Just make sure that you look ahead of time. If you're staying at hotels or lodging in the park, they tend to be a little bit more expensive. So just anticipate that. And also know that if you're camping, make sure that you are packing the correct gear. And one note to tell you that a lot of people don't realize when traveling to the Grand Canyon, if you're going in the winter months, only the south rim of the Grand Canyon will be open to visitors. The north rim gets too icy and snowy and hard for many people to handle with that type of area with as many visitors as they get. So they only have the south rim open. The north rim, which is fantastic if you're looking for fewer crowds, I should say, and more to feel like you're a little bit more isolated, then the north rim is where you're going to want to go to do some hiking. They're still going to get crowds. It's still gorgeous everywhere you go. I mean, that's the thing. Everywhere you go, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. I don't think that you're going to go to a spot and be like, oh, this sucks. No, it's all wonderful. You just have to make sure that you are aware of whatever trails and places that you're hiking, that you pack accordingly, and you pay attention to recommendations that the park rangers and people will tell you, as well as don't go by yourself anywhere, okay? Because sometimes these trails look like you can make it, and you say, oh, well, I can run a 5K in a morning, but you're looking at one of these trails, and it's a 6-mile trail, especially going down to the river. was it Bright Angel Trail. They say it's not a good idea to actually try to make that in one day. They recommend that you camp doing that, and it's amazing, an amazing place to go and trail to take, but it's roughly about 6 miles, but you're not going to make it in one day. So you don't want to be climbing or trailing through the canyon in dark hours. So make sure that you are looking and paying attention to all of those. But there's so many different trails and places to go. You can go to the Hoppy House, and you can find Native American art and jewelry, the Verkamps Visitor Center. There's just so much to do, and I don't think anyone really realizes that. And there's beautiful waterfalls that you can go to, but all these things take time to get there. So if you're only going for those lookout points right in the Old Town Village and to get that photo op, awesome. But really, I challenge you to or encourage you to spend more time. And that is possible. Like I said, if you are not camping, you're not a camp, if you don't like camping in tents and things like that, you can stay in lodges in the park, which is great. Or you can travel back to Williams or Flagstaff. It's only an hour, so it's really easy to make that trip back and forth. Now, if you're doing the train, if you're doing the rail and you do the package, they tend to go back that same day, but they do have packages where they'll take you in one morning, you actually stay a night in the park, and then you have another full day, and then you come back the next day. And that's what I would highly recommend. It is going to be it's going to be pricey per person, but that's including some meals within the train, the entertainment aspect. In fact, when the rail is riding back into Williams, they actually have people that play bandits that ride horses right along the train and actually hold up the train, and it stops the train, and they get on and they board, and it's a ton of fun, and it's got great entertainment value. It makes just a different experience that you're going to want to have. And if the beauty of the Grand Canyon is not enough, they offer so many other opportunities there. But just be aware of where you're hiking. Like I said, the Northridge is a little bit more isolated and feels a little more rugged, but there are some very doable trails that you can take. Just be aware of your time. Another really great recommendation is to do the mule ride down the canyon. But again, you want to plan yourself accordingly. So you're not going to be able to do it all, at least not in one day. So that is the biggest thing that people don't realize when going to the Grand Canyon. So, and if you're not going to stay in the park, then go back to Williams or Flagstaff. There are some great accommodations that you can stay there. I really recommend the lodging there with the Grand Canyon Railway Hotel in Williams. It's got everything you're going to need. And if you're in an RV, they have an RV park there as well. So, and like I said, yes, they do take care of your pets. So they have a doggy daycare. So a lot of us, especially if you're with an RV or you're road tripping, we travel with our pets. I know that if we are road tripping, we tend to try to travel with our pets if we can. So that's just an extra bonus. So there you go. The Grand Canyon, awe-inspiring, but there's so much more to uncover there. I recommend you guys doing it, and don't go to Arizona without going to the Grand Canyon. It's just going to be a crime if you do that. So there you go, guys. That is a fantastic little trip, and you could do all of that within 5 days. You could hit up Phoenix, Sedona, all those little side road trips, go into Flagstaff or Williams, and then do a day or two with the Grand Canyon. It's possible to do all of that within about 5 or 6 days. I really encourage you to take at least a week to do that, because to me, I would stay in Sedona for 3 or 4 days if I could. Maybe Phoenix 1 or 2, just because it's fun to be in the city and do those things. But I really like to get out into the nature area and see what Arizona has to offer. And then, of course, spending a couple days, like 2 or 3 days with the Grand Canyon or in Williams and the Grand Canyon, it's great. So you can really spend, I think, have a really great week and get so much and see so much of Arizona. It's something you're not going to want to miss. So stay with me, because when we come back, we are going to get into a small list of America's hardest day hikes. You're not going to want to miss this.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. We were just discussing the awe-inspiring and most amazing landmarks, the Grand Canyon. That's right. So make sure that you put that on your to-do list if you're visiting Arizona. But for sticking around, I'm going to go through a couple of hikes since we've been talking about a lot of outdoor hiking. But I'm going to talk about a couple of hikes that might be what people consider some of the hardest day hikes in the United States. So some of these, you're not going to be surprised at the area. Some of them you might be. But let's start off right, and we'll go from Colorado because, you know, with the Rockies and everything in Colorado, there's so much hiking to do. And when there's a lot of trails and a lot of hiking to do, there's a lot of challenges and difficulties there. And one of the toughest day hikes to do is Long's Peak's Keyhole Route in Colorado. And it's one of the most difficult 14,000 peaks in Colorado because there's many 14,000 peaks in Colorado. There's just a lot. So it's a very popular it's a very popular trail, but less than 50% of hikers who attempt the Longs actually reach the 14,255 feet summit. The 15-mile round trip has over 5,000 vertical feet of elevation gain. I mean, 15 miles with over 5,000 vertical feet of elevation. That is crazy. That is crazy. So some of you guys that are attempting this, man, kudos to you. You are hiking royalty doing things like that. So it adds a little bit of excitement there, but that is what I would consider, that is definitely making the list. So if you want to challenge Long's Peak, Keyhole Route there in Colorado, it's definitely up for you to take on. All right, another one, we're going to jump a little bit over to the other side of the country, of the U.S., and the Devil's Patch, Catskills, New York. This is considered a difficult day trip. I don't know if it's one of the most difficult hiking day trips, but it is considered a difficult day trip. And so it makes my list. And like many other hikes where this comes on the list, this is a 23.6 mile hike in the Catskills. It can be broken up to a multiple day adventure. So you're basically doing a marathon with this hike. That's right. You can knock it out. It's basically, travelers get the most beautiful terrain in New York, basically, by doing this. It's great. It's a matter of 18,000 feet of elevation gain made as hikers roll along these ridge lines. So right there, you can kind of think about just that in general. So definitely Devil's Patch, Catskills, New York. Put it on the list. You may or may not want to be doing that. Staying on the East Coast over there, we're going to stay and we're going to go along with the Appalachian Trail there. And I hope I pronounce this right, but another day trip hike that is considered very difficult, the Mahoosic Mile Appalachian Trail in Maine. That's right. So, and you know, everyone's like, oh, I could do 1 mile. But this 1 mile section of 179 mile Appalachian Trail It's 1 mile out of 2,179 miles of the Appalachian Trail. So that's it. This is considering a very difficult hike, and it's only 1 mile out of that. And it's considered one of the most challenging of them all. That's right. It's located in western Maine, and this section of the trail passes through Mahoosic Notch. I hope I pronounced that correctly. The challenges here, compared to other sites, it's mossy boulders and like narrow caves and sections that drop far enough around like 10 feet. And I mean, you could really hurt yourself in this hike. So you have to be prepared. Again, you should never be doing these by yourself, or at least you should always have some kind of GPS or letting somebody know. But it's definitely a very adventurous and rugged trail. It's not going to be for the novelist hiker. You're really going to want to be experienced or be traveling with people that are very experienced, because you're going to be doing a little bit of crawling and scrambling around, and that sounds like a lot of fun, and I bet it is. I bet it is a lot of fun, but, for doing it for a mile, it'll feel like you're doing it for 5 miles, I'm sure. So definitely one to check out. Going back a little bit west, we're going to move back a little bit west into the Utah area, and we're going to go into the Zion National Park. So Angel's Landing. Angel's Landing is another trail that's considered one of the most difficult trails, or a very difficult day trip trail. It's got a 5,790-foot summit that rises nearly 1,500 feet from the ground below. So, I mean, right away, that is just very daunting to think about in itself. So it's only 5 miles round trip. So you say, oh, it's only 5 miles round trip, right? And it's not even sometimes going up that becomes the issue. It also can be coming down. So with spectacular views that you're going to see, be aware that coming down is going to be something you want to be careful with as well when doing some of these. This hike specifically is recommended to be careful on your way down, but with any hiking up and down a mountain, you're going to want to be careful coming down. So there you go, Angel's Landing in Zion National Park. That's another, if you're those enthusiast hikers looking for that challenge, that's another one to put on your list. Moving even farther west, we're going to move into California. That's right. We're going to look at Mount Whitney. That's right, in Whitney Portal. So Mount Whitney is 14,505 feet. It's the largest point in the lower 48 states, okay? And by default, it's the highest mountain in California. So the trail to the summit begins at Whitney Portal, 8,360 feet, and then climbs over 6,100 feet, and it's 11 miles one way to the top. Right there, 11 miles up a mountain, just one way. So you're going to pretty much be doing a marathon on a mountain. So if you've ever had aspirations of doing a marathon and wanted to add more to it, you're like, 26 miles, nothing, right? Well, there you go. How about doing 22 miles up a mountain and down a mountain in total, right? It's going to feel like you did double a marathon, right? So that is another challenge. And spectacular views, a 22-mile round trip. You are just going to be blown away with the views you're going to see. And with all of these hikes and needing to be experienced or sometimes do some training for these, make sure that you are you're packed with the proper provisions, the right footwear, everything you need. And really, when you're going at some of these elevations, sometimes it's not even the distance, but the elevation itself that becomes the challenge that we don't even think about, if you're not an avid hiker or, rock climber or anything that spends time at higher elevations. Because when you get up to those certain points where the air is much thinner, makes it harder to breathe, it really can take a toll on your body. It absolutely can take a toll on your body. So keep that in mind as well when you're thinking about these. Okay, let's go into another one. I'm gonna throw this one out there. This is in Idaho. Okay, Bora Peak, the Lost River Range. Okay, so this one right there, it's along with Mount Whitney, 12,662. Bora Peak is a state high point. Okay, just to get a clue about pretty much how tough this hike is, the standard route is also known as Chicken Out Ridge. So there you go. Right there, they're calling you out. They're just saying, okay, we're going to call this spot Chicken Out Ridge. It's very remote, and even according to some people and what they say is Idaho standards, it's extremely remote, and that's saying something in itself. It's a 6.8-mile round trip with a little over 5,200 feet of elevation gain. I mean, that is really an incredible amount of elevation gain to deal with. And for those of you that don't like calling it Chicken Out Ridge, or, I guess not looking for the humor in it, it's also known as Southwest Ridge Route. So this is a very challenging hike, and if you want to put yourself through this, I'm sure the risk is going to be worth the reward when you see that view. So there you go. Check that out in Idaho. Bora Peak, Lost River Range. Okay, we're going to jump into one more, okay? So this is going to round out my list here, and this is another hike that is extremely difficult, and we're going to jump back into Utah because, there are mountains in Utah. The Maze. It's called the Maze. I think I just like it because it's called the Maze, personally. Because the start of it, like to get to the start of this hike, or where it begins, it's at least about a 3-hour trip on a 4x4 road. With a 4x4 just to get there to start the maze properly. So that alone should tell you right away how difficult this hike is. And it's even been quoted that people that they say, and rangers will say, sure, you can hike it, you'll probably die, but hey, it's none of our business, right? I mean, it's not easy to get to. You got them, you even if it comes across jokingly, that when you say something like that, that's kind of serious right there. Again, I'm sure for those experienced hikers that want to take on this challenge, that do, the views and the reward is phenomenal. I mean, you're going to see rounded white rock cliffs, slick rock, polished slot canyons, hidden pools. I mean, there's just so much and so much beauty out there in this area. I'm sure it's worth it, but that's where I have to kind of borderline draw the line. Is it worth it? If, it's taken 3 hours just to get to a starting point where I'm not even hiking yet, and then, you have rangers and people saying, sure, you'll probably die, So for those of you brave enough to take on this, the Maze in Canyonlands, Utah, there you go. And that is going to round up my list. Those are some of what I would consider the hardest day hikes or hardest hikes in the U.S. that you can travel or to attempt. There are more out there. I know there are, but if you guys are enthusiasts or hiking enthusiasts, maybe check some of these out. I might have to do another list where we find some of the easiest trails and things to do, a little more relaxing. I hope you've been inspired to take a trip this year or look to start planning one. It's never too late to start traveling. It can open our eyes to new experiences, even unlock things about ourselves that we never knew. I believe everyone should travel and explore more of what this world has to offer. It can give us an appreciation and love for so many things. So let's start traveling.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From travel to health and wellness to entertainment and life and happiness to sex and relationships. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast.